From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we take a look at what the Broncos have done in NFL free agency. Earlier, we looked at the offense. Now, we're going to look at the defensive side of the ball. And Benjamin, we're going to start with one of the biggest additions that they made all offseason, and that is Zach Allen on the defensive line, former defensive end from the Arizona Cardinals, comes here on a 3-year deal. And one of the things you have to like right away about Zach Allen is he's wonderful against the run.
Well, he is, yeah, and that's sort of the thing. I mean, he's coming in to replace Traymon Jones. Traymon was more of an upfield, interior gap penetrator, get after the quarterback kind of guy. Zach Allen has some of that ability, but he's also great against the run. He holds those run gaps up. And if you're going to run the scheme that Vance Joseph runs, those guys have got to tie up blockers because the linebackers are going to be the ones that are making the plays. And so getting a guy like Zach Allen who can tie up that many blockers versus Traymon, who's more of a one-on-one guy, really, I think, is beneficial to what the Broncos are going to run this next year. The cost, I know people said the overall totals on the deals were similar, but the reality is the Traymon Jones deal is really a 2-year deal with $23.5 million up front in year one. The Broncos needed to backload deals because of the Russ deal, and so that made matching that deal sort of impossible and gave them a player that's probably more well-rounded for what they want to run next year at a reasonable cost. It ends up being a 3-year deal versus a 2 for Traymon. I know Traymon's just framed as a 3-year deal, but it's really a 2-year deal.
But you're right. I mean, he had 5.5 sacks last year, his most productive season. And like I said, it's the combination of being able to play against the run. I think Next Gen Stats had him only behind Aaron Donald in run stopping. So
and DJ Jones is up there too. You're going to have two guys up front that can really plug that run, allow the linebackers to make plays.
Exactly. So I think you said it perfectly. For what the Broncos need at this time with the scheme that they're going to try to run, they need Zach Allen to be that guy. So good signing there. And they also bring back Alex Singleton as we kind of get to the next level. And honestly, a guy that came here on a 1-year prove-it deal from Philadelphia, led the team in tackles and then some, played special teams. They moved him all over the field. He didn't just play inside linebacker. Sometimes they had him standing up as an outside linebacker. I'm a really big fan of that. They gave him a 3-year contract. And, once again, you're just talking about every year we talk about the inside linebacker position needs to be addressed. I think this is a good way to look at it in terms of you're going to bring some continuity back there and a guy that had high-level production.
Well, yeah. And we talk about this defense needing linebackers to make plays. Alex Singleton was a playmaker already. Now he gets a scheme in which he gets to be a featured playmaker, and that's going to be big for him. Former CFL Defensive Player of the Year. He led the Eagles in tackles, and they just disrespect him by letting him go. So much for that. The Broncos, so much the better for it, I think, getting him on the prove-it deal and then getting him on the deal that they have now. With the deal that Zach Allen signed, they were able to get him in under the cap versus if they'd paid Draymond and matched Seattle's, they wouldn't have been able to bring Singleton back. So I think if you look at the scales of what you're able to do and people who are missing Draymond, would you rather have Zach Allen and Alex Singleton, or would you rather just have Traymon Jones? And I think the answer to that to me is pretty clear. You'd rather have both players. So Alex Singleton, a guy who, what did he play last year? 12 games, I think. Started 12, played something like 13, 14 games, and came very, very close to leading the league in tackles.
Yes.
At the pace that he was at last year, and you put him in this defense, he might get 200 tackles this season if he can stay healthy. So I look forward to seeing what he can do in this defense where he's more allowed to make plays and go and do some different things.
He's great in the locker room, too. Yep. I mean, we were around the players a lot. He was a guy that really resonated with a lot of other players in the locker room. So a combination of that, I think, is also valuable. The Broncos have recently been moving on from defensive captains, right? Players that are prominent players in the locker room on the defensive side of the ball. So I think every so often keeping one of those guys that kept Justin Simmons a couple of years ago, I think there's a lot of value in doing that too.
Sometimes you got to turn over a defense too. We've been turning over an offense. You got to turn over a defense a little bit too, and they had to do that. I mean, Ron Darby, I thought was a great corner, but they had to unfortunately let him go in order to make some other things work. Now you got Damari Mathis, kind of stepping up as next man up if they don't bring in another corner. They added Traymon Smith, who's got return ability and creates a lot of turnovers there. As a corner. I think one of the interesting things to me is that most of the guys that they brought in are guys that either, especially the offensive side of the ball, are guys that come from winning cultures. Now, Arizona didn't win last year, but they've been winning the last couple of years. And then you look at some of these other guys. Alex Singleton obviously was making plays. And then you go back and you look at, Traymon's a guy who had been with the Chiefs, been with the Texans, and playmaker, and been in winning cultures before. So to me, that was kind of interesting. I think another big move that's going underrated is bringing P.J. Locke back. I think he's a fit for this defense. He's a guy who can get down in the box a little bit. He'll create turnovers, can create fumbles, and he can play kind of that robber safety. I know everybody talks about Caden Stearns, and I think when there are two high looks, Stearns will be out there. But P.J. Locke has the ability to get down there in the box where maybe the other two guys don't.
No, I mean, we're definitely going to get Traymon Smith because that's a little bit of an under-the-radar impressive signing because, again, as you put it, he fits multiple roles for what you're trying to do out there. And again, we can sit here and talk about want to see more from Montreal Washington, want to see him get more opportunities. This isn't even a negative thing about him as a returner, but you want more competition there. And Traymon Smith has been good. He's been very good as a returner in this league. And not to mention the fact that he can play cornerback and he could be your fourth corner if you really need him to be.
2 games started and had 2 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles. That's wreaking havoc as a corner.
Well, we say the same thing about Caden Stearns, right? When Caden Stearns is in there, what a ball hawk.
And P.J. Locke, same thing.
Finds a way.
Looking forward to seeing these guys get in the rotation a little bit. Traymon has some additional skill as well. I mean, he's a high school quarterback, a prolific high school quarterback down at Sax in Alabama. He played running back for the Texans last year at times as well. So 2-way player, 3-way player. That's certainly a fascinating roster spot to shore up if you have an emergency running back, a fourth corner, and a guy who can play on special teams.
And then one more, Essang Bassey is back. The Broncos brought him back. He had a couple of teams interested in him. The Broncos bring him back. And I think, once again, an acknowledgement as we're talking about Traymon Smith, talking about P.J. Locke, talking about now Essang Bassey. It's just you really can't have too much depth. You really can't.
Right, and I that's the thing. I think having that kind of depth, those kind of playmakers and guys that can, especially in Traymon's place, hold up multiple roster spots is going to be inherently valuable if you're going to be playing for Sean Payton.
Right, and so the secondary. You may still take a look at that in the draft, depending on how your draft board is. But once again, kind of like we talked about with the offensive side of the ball, you put yourself in a good position heading into the draft, knowing that you don't really have to make an extreme reach or feel like you have to fill a hole at any point. And again, right now you only have 5 draft picks. That could change, obviously, but understanding that you don't want to go into the draft, especially when you're looking from round 3 beyond, looking for starters. You just can't do it.
Yeah, and so that's the thing now. Now you're going to play the patience game with the draft and stack your board best as possible and look to see if you're going to have some maneuverability unless you have some other trades that you make along your current roster.
All right, so if we're sort of stacking the defense right now it's not a complete picture yet. You haven't done the draft. Free agency is still happening. But if we're stacking the defense right now, where do you like their depth? Where do you like their starters? Where do you think there needs to be still something addressed?
I like the depth at the linebacking core. I like the depth in the safeties. I think the corners, you need one more corner. And I think on the defensive line, you need a nose tackle. I don't think you can just rely on Mike Purcell to be healthy all year, and you don't really have anyone else that sort of fills that role.
Yeah, because Deshaun, who did some of that, is now in Carolina.
Yeah, he's in Carolina. You got to Wazirike and Henningsen backing up the other 2 spots, but you need a true nose. So I think you need a nose. I think you need a corner. I think you always kind of take an edge guy if there's a guy there. But I think nose and corner are the 2 that they need one more.
Yeah, edge could be a sneaky position of need, right? Depending on the development of some of your younger players there. We know Baron Browning is an ascending player, right? Randy Gregory is obviously a very, very strong, talented player. But again, health has been a little bit concerned for both of them. Nick Benito, obviously, this is a season he needs to step up. Jonathan Cooper has been a revelation as a 7th rounder, really. I mean, the fact that he's played as well as he has. So
don't sleep on Jake Martin.
And I'm not down on Jake Martin. It's just understanding, okay, so that's 5 deep. And usually you go 5 deep on your 53, but there are question marks.
Right. And health and obviously and that kind of thing too. But I think they've got the right edge guys, and I think the health thing, they're really hoping that they'll stay healthy this year. So they may add 1 and have 6 and kind of practice squad it. But I think in the end, the real priority things are getting one more corner, getting a true nose if there's one available, and then, kind of filling in a few spots here or there.
Since we did address a little bit of special teams, welcome back to town, Riley Dixon. Want to make sure I give a little bit of love to Riley Dixon coming back to Broncos.
Yeah, I don't think they should have got rid of him originally.
Agreed.
When they did. Sam Martin certainly was a better punter, but you could have had roughly the same results with Riley Dixon in the end anyway. You bring him back, and putting was an issue last year, very sporadic. So Waitman had a big leg, but very, very sporadic.
Well, and Waitman is here. They tendered him. So
they'll compete. But
yeah, there's some competition, but it's a 2-year deal for Riley Dixon. But I still like that because you said it. I mean, the numbers bear it out, right? Mm-hmm. Special teams was a mess. And when you have the narrow margins that the Broncos were working on last year, hopefully it's better this year, right? Hopefully your margins are better. But when you're working in those narrow margins, special teams, field position, matters a lot.
They do, and you can't have punts that are netting 30 yards, either out-kicking your coverage and not getting enough hang time, or shanking, getting it short. It was, like I said, like Corliss Waitman, he's got a heck of a leg, but it was just too erratic, and you need more consistency out of that.
All right. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Denver's going to win it! You can stand up and salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.